We've got to talk about this issue. There is a growing number of young people whose lives are just being destroyed by this. And that was Chloe Cole. She's one of the most recognized voices now. She just a few months ago testified before Congress on her 19th birthday about this whole transgender movement and what it's doing to young people and how there's incredible amounts of regret. And we as a church, we as Christians need to be prepared to help to speak into these lives. You and I, and especially parents, let me just tell you this. The conversation is coming with your kids. You thought you had the real one awkward conversation, the whole sex talk thing? Well, you've got this one too now, because this is a huge issue. This is an exploding issue in our culture. Let me give you a perspective on this. This is the actual stats generationally. So my generation, we're the boomers. The ones before me was the silent generation. So Swanee is a silent generation. I'm a boomer. The one after me is Generation X. And so if you look at those three generations, that's a long period of time. Those who identify as LGBTQ in those generations were at or below 2%. For all of them, LGBTQ, at or below 2%. Then the millennials come along. That's Jeremy, that's Tucker, right? That's that age group. For the millennials, it's exploded. It went up fivefold, 5 times what it was, and it jumps up to 11.2%. It just, boom, it was out there, big time. And then Generation Z, which is the generation right now, which is now in college and just getting out of college, are the ones finding their careers. For Generation Z, it jumped up another twofold it's up at 19.7%. So when you think about this, Generation Z, 1 in 5 people you meet in that generation identifies as I can't even say it, LGBTQ right now. And that's amazing to me. It is just exploding. And the research shows it has no biological foundation whatsoever. It's not genetic. There's nothing biological driving this. In fact, what we see is whole groups, whole peer groups coming out together. And what research is showing is that it's driven by social media. It's driven by social media, peers, and influencers. In fact, a very interesting paper just came out just a month or so ago in a scientific periodical, and it demonstrated that this is really being driven by recruiters. It's really driven by this social media and peer group thing. And the LGBTQ community got so berserk about it, they so harassed the scientific journal that they pulled the paper, which is unheard of in science. But that shows how powerful this transgender community is, how vocal. In fact, Chloe Cole, who you saw on the video, she speaks out now, and she's been harassed, she's been threatened. She says the community that what she was once a part of has now just gone berserk on her, and she gets scared. It's dangerous. And so it's dangerous to come out. So let's talk about this. Let's arm some parents. Let's arm ourselves so we can love these people and give them some truth so they can think their way and process their way through this. So one of the things Chris Beck points out, Chris Beck is a Navy SEAL. So he's past his early adult age. He was served as a Navy SEAL. He then went through this transgender process to become a girl. He did that, found that, it wasn't everything it's cracked up to be. In fact, it has a lot of health issues that comes with these surgeries. He did not like it, realized it was a mistake, and has reversed course and come back towards a man. And Chris Beck now is outspoken, and this is what he says, and this is so true. He says, so one of the biggest pieces of data that they're missing right now is that 80% of the kids who are going through gender dysphoria and gender confusion, either before puberty or during puberty, 80% of those kids are corrected. They will get rid of all that gender confusion by the time puberty is over. 80%. Now, that's a stat they don't want you to know. It's actually better than this. He's downplaying it. The numbers are significantly better than this, especially for boys. But think about that. 8 out of 10 people that are currently struggling with these gender confusion issues will resolve it by the time puberty's over. Think about that. Does the average person know that? In fact, one of the things they're saying, and they say it over and over and over again, that you need to help them transition as soon as possible or they may commit suicide. Well, actually, statistically, Congress put medical professionals on the spot, giving testimony, asked them for the literature on that, showing us the study that has demonstrated that, and there is no study. It's just part of the myth that goes with this. And as you'll see, it's probably the other direction. So Chris Beck goes on. He says, if a kid goes on puberty blockers, when they're 13, 14, or 15, so that's chemical castration. Let's just be clear. That kills your ability to make your own hormones to be the man or woman that you're going to be. That's puberty blockers. So when they do this at 13, 14, or 15 years old, they're chemically castrated. They're not going to have children when they get older. They're not given this data. So 8 of those kids out of those 10 are going to want to go back to be just a regular old person, and they're not going to be able to. And this is the problem. All these kids are making these decisions, and the youngest I've seen is 12 years old, but it ranges, and so many before they're done with high school. They make these drastic, life-altering decisions, and there's no going back. So let me give you the actual stat that he's citing. So if you go to the American College of Pediatricians, this is what they say. And so it's better than what Chris Beck says. He says 90% of all boys who go through gender confusion issues will resolve it by the time of puberty's over. Only 2% don't. Think about that. Only 2% don't self-resolve. And then 88% of girls, meaning only 12 don't, will resolve this by the time puberty's over. Isn't that amazing? That is truth. That is the facts. And so what's happening is these kids are being pushed, they're being recruited, and they're being pulled towards this lifestyle. They're given this presentation that it's cool and it's trendy and it's popular. And if you do this, you will really resolve these issues. But after they pull the trigger and they do drastic things to their bodies, they have incredible amounts of regrets. Thousands of people are regretting it. So this is Kobe. Kobe is not his real name, so I'll just be straight up. He goes by Kobe. You can go and search him, but that's not who he really is, because these people are attacked when they come out and say anything about this. You probably have realized this is a tough area to talk about because they lash out at you. But Kobe started out on puberty blockers at 13. So chemically castrated at 13, estrogen at 16, because now he needs a different hormone. He's trying to become a girl, so he's taking estrogen, and then physically castrated at 19. That's his process. Now, this is him after the fact, realizing he's made a mistake. He said, I started using like the suicide tactics, because that's what they are. That's what they tell us all to do. I don't want to use the word groom, but we are like taught. I guess the older trans people teach us to say that stuff to get the health care and everything. So the young people are actually trained to say, hey, I'm thinking of self-harm, I'm thinking about hurting myself, whatever, I'm thinking about suicide, and that puts parents in this horrible situation where parents are now, do I choose between my boy who might commit suicide or a trans girl who won't? And it's a horrible decision to have to make as a parent. And the community knows that, and so they teach the kids to do that. That was what Kobe was taught. He says, I was expecting it to help, meaning all this process, this transition. I was expecting it to help me help my mental health. And it didn't do anything. I just wasted so much time, and all I did really was become a medical patient for life. Because once you start, you go down these roads, and your body just rejects this. We got to remember that we're male or female right down to our chromosomes. It doesn't matter what you do with your exterior of your body and how many chemicals you pump into it of the other sex. You are still chromosomally what you were born to be. And your body rejects it, and it's not a smooth transition. It is not necessarily a good thing. He says, honestly, I feel alive again. Now he's talking about going back to where he was supposed to be, the way God made him. And he said, honestly, I feel alive again, because his body was meant to be this way. I feel alive again. I feel energetic. I feel confident. I feel great. And it just goes to show that cross-sex hormones are bad. They're just bad. And this is the testimony that's over and over and over again. Chloe, because she's been so outspoken, she's gathered this network of thousands and thousands of people, and we're starting to get a picture of how miserable it is. Kobe says this at the end. He says, I know now that so many people end up taking their own lives after the surgery. Notice it's not before the surgery. In the network, as they talk, it's not before surgery, it's now after surgery. They have so many regrets, and their physical health is so bad that they're now thinking about suicide after the surgery. So, and honestly, if they had been allowed to invert my genitalia into what looked like a female genitalia, I don't think I would be here in a couple of years, meaning he would have committed suicide. Honestly. Because there's no undoing that. This is serious stuff. Do you see what's going on in the culture? Let me give you a couple more so you can see how broad this is. Jasmine had a double mastectomy at 15. She says, I kind of feel a little bit mutilated and like an experiment gone wrong, walking through society sometimes. I feel like sometimes jealous of other people, women, who are biologically female, that they still have their natural voice, because the testosterone lowers your voice. Their natural characteristics, she means the body, the female shape, and probably the breasts, and I don't anymore. The regret for Jasmine. Kira Bell says this. He says, after a series of superficial conversations with social workers, I was put on puberty blockers at 16. A year later, I was receiving testosterone shots. When 20, I had a double mastectomy. But the further my transition went, the more I realized that I wasn't a man and never would be. That's a recurring theme I've seen in testimonies, these regret publications, is that it doesn't matter how far they go, it doesn't matter how much they do to the outside of the body, and even with hormones, that it really doesn't really change you. It doesn't really do what it's promised to do. And they have this picture, these people who are struggling with this gender dysphoria have this picture in their head that they're going to be fully changed. They're going to be a full woman or a full man when they're done. And they go through these processes, these irreversible processes, and they go through it all and find, it still didn't work. What's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do? Because it's just never enough. You never really feel like a man. You never really feel like a woman. And so it just doesn't work. It's a promise that just doesn't deliver. And so going back to Chloe Cole, she had a double mastectomy and testosterone at 15. She's talking here now. She's testifying before Congress in these quotes. She's on her 19th birthday. So it's been a 4-year process for her. So she started at 15 with a double mastectomy and testosterone. But it obviously started a little bit before that because she had this gender issue. She went to her parents, and her parents took her to a doctor. And this is what she says about going to the doctor. She said, this proved to be a mistake. It immediately sent our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty blockers right away, immediately. They asked my parents a simple question. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? And the choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down. In retrospect, I can't blame them. This is the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. You getting a picture? That's what's going on in our nation right now. And it's not just a few dozens, thousands and thousands and thousands of kids have gone through this. And remember what the stat I gave you, about 20% of Generation Z identifies. And if the trend continues, it continues to explode like this, there are more and more kids that are going to be struggling because they're in classrooms, they're in peer groups, they're on social media, and it's driving this thing and getting them to question things that they probably shouldn't question and go down these roads. And they are being pushed, and it is destroying their lives. So, as Chloe Cole put it, my childhood was ruined, along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. This needs to stop. And you alone can stop it. And of course, she's talking to Congress. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Wow. Wow. So much hurt, so much brokenness, so much just devastated lives. And they're just being churned up. And it's all this push to feel more comfortable, that the whole community wants more and more to legitimize who they feel they are. And they're pushing this on our kids, and these kids' lives are being ruined, and we've got to start speaking up. We have got to start being willing to be attacked, because that's what it takes. Is if you speak up, they won't like it. But if enough of us speak up and it becomes a trend, they will realize. Plus, there's so much truth. If they just knew the truth about the stats and what's happening, every sane person would be opposed to this. So what does the Bible say? How do we help? How do we help the parents? How do we help these people that are struggling? What do we do? So let me just tell you what the Bible does say. So there is one Bible verse that talks about this specifically, and it's in Deuteronomy 22:5. And so this is the law section in Deuteronomy, and this is what God says. A woman is not to wear male clothing, and a man is not to put on women's garment. For everyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord your God. Now, let me explain. I don't think God has a problem, at least I hope he doesn't. I don't think he has a problem like if a woman dresses up as a boy for Halloween. I don't think that's what this verse is about. I don't think God has a problem if a boy dresses up like a girl to do a skit for Boy Scouts. I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think the idea of this verse is this, that God made you a certain way. He made you male or female, and to reject that is to reject God. And that's what's detestable. And so somebody who goes down this path of pursuing being the opposite sex by living in that lifestyle, I think that's what he's talking about. And the reason he's saying it's detestable and wrong is because, hey, I'm God, and I made you. And that's one of the big things we need to communicate to these young people. I can't get it to advance. So, no, I did two slides. What happened? All right. So the big thing is this. The message that they need to hear is that God, in a sense, told them a huge amount about themselves just by how he made them. That we were created on purpose, and our bodies tell a story, and that story, in a sense, tells us who we are. And we tell ourselves a lie, and we do it innocently, but the lie is this, is you can be anything you want to be. We tell our kids that, do we not? You can be anybody you want to be. It's not true, because a guy can't be a girl and a girl can't be a guy. You just can't do it, regardless how hard you try. I cannot be a competitive jockey. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how passionate I am, how hard I work at it. They are never going to put me on a horse and say ride. I'll never get a paid job doing it. A midget is never, ever, 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 ever going to compete in the NBA. It's just not going to happen, right? You can't really do anything you want. I know our culture wants to say that and we want to believe it, but the truth biblically is God made us on purpose. He made us for a reason, and he has a plan for our lives, and our bodies give a hint at that. Start to tell a story that we get to uncover, that we get to figure out the rest of our lives. And part of that revelation is some people are born male, some people are born female, and that's what Genesis 1:27 tells us. We saw that last week. So God created mankind, all of humanity in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And so, again, we can do this in a loving way, but there's only two genders. Gender and sex are not different things. They are the same thing. And there's only male and there's only female. That's all God ever made. And that was his intent and that was his plan. And all of this stuff with all of these different pronouns and all of these different hundreds of genders is just a push to say we're God. We're now God. We get to choose. We get to determine our destiny. And that's why God says this is detestable, because you're not God, I'm God. And we believe in as Psalm 139 says, for you created my inmost being. So my soul, my personality, my skills, my talents, my abilities, that inner part of me, God, you made that. You gave that to me. And then more, you knit me together in my mother's womb physically as well. You determined my body type, my looks, my hair color. You counted the number of hairs on my head, and you made me exactly what you wanted me to be. And God is not a cruel God. He doesn't say, oh, here's a female soul. Let me put it in this male body and tell him it's wrong to do anything about it. God would never do that. God is love. That's not what he's done. He has not made them that way. And we believe Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And so we believe as Christians who believe in God that every single person is made in the image of God, male or female, and they have this incredible life ahead of them, their best life in God, and he has a plan for them, and it's a good plan. It's a good plan. So the first thing I'd say is, hey, your body gives you a different message than your emotions right now. But your body's never going to change. Your body will always be male. Your body will always be female. And you're not just a little bit male on the surface or a little bit female on the surface. You are to the core, to your very chromosomes, your DNA, you are male or female, and you cannot change it. And those have tried, and they have failed. You just cannot do it because he is God and we are not. The second thing I tell young people is this, is not only that your body says something about God's plan for your life, but the second thing I'd say is diversity is good. And I mean diversity the way God means diversity. Part of the problem, and you heard it in Chloe's testimony, and I've heard it a lot, is this. These young people that are struggling with their identities are not accepted or don't feel like they fit into the stereotype that culture gives them for male or female. They just feel like they don't belong, that they don't fit. So there's this male stereotype, this grunting, football playing, lumberjack kind of guy who wears flannel and has a gun rack in their car, who goes hunting, right? There's that guy, that male image, and that's what men are. And if you don't fit that image, there's something wrong with you. And women over here, there's this pink-wearing, Barbie-loving, girly-frilly thing over here. And if you don't fit into that, you're not really a girl. Well, that's lies. And we as Christians of all people should be dismantling that, because it's causing our young people problems. It's creating bullying scenarios, and we've got to undermine that and show it's not true. Let me just give you one verse to show biblically this isn't true. So you know Abraham, right? Abraham, the father of faith, and he had Isaac that he went and offered to God. Isaac went on to get married because he didn't get killed that time on the mountain. He actually gets married. He has twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau comes out first. Notice the difference in these guys, showing that God has this breadth of maleness and this breadth of femaleness. Because notice how he describes it. This is Genesis 25:27. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter and a man of the open country. Right? He's a hunter, right? And other places it describes him as hair everywhere, right? It puffs out of his shirt. He's got this hairy arms, and he's just this, he's the lumberjack kind of guy. He's the manly man, right? If they had football, he would have played it. Now, Jacob, who ends up being the man of legacy, notice what it says about him. While Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. What's that code for? He was more comfortable where the women were, back at the tents. Was it wrong? Was Jacob feeling weird that he wasn't like Esau? Probably. But the point is this: God has this diversity of maleness, and we need all types. And he's got this diversity of femaleness, and we need all types. For instance, guys, we need the macho, burly guy. We do. We need them. But we also need the thoughtful, sensitive guys to be, I don't know, doctors and counselors. We need the whole breadth of them for culture, for society, to fill all the roles. And ladies, we need tom girls. we need the frilly girls. We need all of them. All of them have their place. And one is not right and one is not wrong. They are part of God's plan. Diversity is good. And these young people need to hear, and we need to intervene and say, hold it. God has a broad plan. And there's all different kinds of guys, and there's all different kinds of girls. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's okay. It's okay to be that kind of guy. And then the last thing I'd say is, in the end, don't ever trust your feelings. Don't trust your feelings. We have been placed in this horrible situation in our culture today where we have to choose. And we've got to choose between what our bodies declare and what our feelings feel. And the world is saying, ignore your body. Your body doesn't matter. It's an accident, because Darwin has just messed up everything. And Darwin has said, you're just an accident. You're this hodgepodge of things. There's no creator, and you were thrown together. And so what really matters is your emotional state. And so you can just carve up this body. You can reshape this body, because this body doesn't matter. That's all Darwin's fault. Now, as Christians, we say, no. There is a creator, and he made you, and your feelings change. So if you ever needed proof that feelings change, just remember the data. 98% of all boys who have these strong feelings for years, strong feelings that they're really girls, will self-resolve by the time puberty's over. And 88% of all women who have these strong desires for years, will self-resolve by the time puberty's over. Do not trust your feelings. You just can't trust them. We've got to help our kids see that their feelings will change. And we have to help them see. We need to give them the testimonies of these people and help them to hear the regret and the brokenness and just the carnage that has been created by this trend. And help them to see that their bodies represent what God has really made them to be. And embrace the testimony of their bodies. In fact, I love this verse, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. There's got to be a point where we finally say, God, you know what you're doing, and I don't. So trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That could be feelings. And lean not on your own feelings. How many people do you think God has been involved with? How created and helped them live life? Well, there's about 8 billion people today. So let's say about double. Let's say 16 billion people. That's God's experience. He's worked with 16 billion people. And he knew it all beforehand and has now done it, right? 16 billion. How many people have you been? How many people have you been in the process of going through life? Here's the answer. Not even one yet. Because you aren't even done with your life yet. And somebody at 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, it's absurd for them to think, I know better than God. I am God. I get to choose. So he says, hey, trust in the Lord. He knows what he's doing. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, and I love this translation, in all your ways submit to him. Submit. Because that's the idea. That is like, God, I've never done this before. I don't know what your plans are for me and how this will all play out. But I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with what you tell me right here, that you made me to be a man, and I may not be that kind of man, but I'm this kind of man. And I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to live it for you. And what does he promise when we do that? In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. I can tell you a lot about these testimonies just by hearing them. It's not a straight path. You picture that? Going one direction, realizing what a horrible mistake, and coming back and trying to get back on track after years going down the wrong road. He will make your path straight. And what that says to me is if we'll trust him and say, God, you know best. You made me a woman. You made me a man. I'm going to lean on you, and I'm going to just trust that you're going to straighten these feelings out. And God does. God does. In fact, we saw last week that if we embrace the identity God gave us, that a lot of the times our feelings follow suit. Because feelings are the caboose. They're not the locomotive. Feelings follow facts. What you resolve to be, your feelings will fall in line. And then we live our best lives. He will make your path straight. That's our best life. And he has a good plan for us. But we have to get to the place where we embrace his plan. So this is the big idea. God determines who we are, and we discover who we are. God determines who we are. That's his prerogative. He gets to make us. That's the Creator's place. But this is what I've discovered for me, at least. I'm still discovering who I am. There are many times in my life where I would have said it as a teenager, I got it figured all out, but didn't. And then in my 20s, I would have said, I got it figured all out, but I didn't. And then in my 30s, I thought, I have it figured out. I finally cracked the code. I really get it. But I didn't. And then the 40s came, and it's like, now I've arrived. I totally get it now. And guess what? 50s came along and said, no, you don't. And now that I'm in my 60s and I look back on my whole life, I'm still discovering and realizing, and it's been an incredible journey. And we get to discover, but he gets to determine. And what I've discovered is it's better just to ride the ride with him than try to buck the system, because he makes our path straight and he gives us that life that he intended, which was good, and we thrive and we flourish because that's the kind of God he is. So one last quote from Chloe Cole. She was asked at the end what she would say to families. She said, what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? She said, I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to be getting therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirmed to my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to listen to these people. They know what it's like, and we need to feel their pain. the irreversible pain, the longing to one day have kids and not being able to, longing to have that female voice, not being able to have it, the female form, the male form. So much taken away. And we have the truth. And we can present that truth in love, and we can help these kids, these struggling kids, find themselves, discover who God made them to be, and get some straight paths. Let's pray. Lord, we do praise you this morning for you being God and us not, for you being the creator and making us. Sometimes we question the way you've made us, but in your wisdom and in your ways, you made us exactly like you wanted us to be. And Lord, so we thank you for that, at least on the good days. And we just ask that you would help us to see your goodness more and more clearly, that you would help us to see the wonders of who we are and what you made us for more and more clearly. And Lord, I do ask that you would help us to lean not on our own understanding and lean not on our feelings, but to trust in you. And help us as we go down this road of self-discovery, as we live this life with you. And just, Lord, we ask that as we honor you, you would honor us. And that you would be in our lives and you would give us these straight paths, our best life. And Lord, help us as parents. And help us as friends. Help us as grandparents. And help us as teachers, Lord, to give us a voice and a courage to speak into kids' life because we do love them. And we're trying to save them from so much harm. Give us the courage and the love we need to speak up. And give us the words to speak the truth. And Lord, work through that. And change the course of our land. And Lord, most of all, what we need is you. We need you. We need the forgiveness that only you give, that transformation, that new life. And Lord, if there's anyone here that's in the process of searching, who doesn't really have you yet, Lord, help them to realize that they need you. Help them to come to the end of themselves and realize you are what will complete them. You are what will give them fullness of life. You have a good plan for their life, and help them to embrace it by embracing you. Bless them in that way and continue to bless us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.